Does it feel different? Do you look different? Do you?
I grew an inch as soon, but we were talking before you hit record, and then you hit
Yes.
record, and I got taller. Yeah, it once I knew that it was recorded, I think my nutrition from breakfast changed
Worked.
who I am a little bit. Yeah, hello. This is Jason, and I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm excited to be on this call with Mr. Scott. Good stuff going to talk about today. I'm sure he's going to have lots of questions.
You're listening
Sure.
to Idea Charger Radio. Hey there, Success Chargers, and welcome back. It's Scott, and you're here for episode 33. So glad you're back. Hope you're having a good time with the interviews and such that's been going on. Sorry a little bit about that rant last week. I kind of got all wrapped up in the statistics and basically was just trying to make a simple message that said this. Look, the baby boomers are finally, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but finally you're starting to age out of a lot of organizations. And there's a big concern with a lot of companies that a lot of knowledge is going with those folks, particularly that some of those departures are being accelerated by the current economic downturn, especially in the oil and gas industry that we're seeing right now. And my point there was that, you really want to make sure that you've got a good foundation of people that you're bringing up in your stable of all ages, of all generations, right behind them. And I want to, with all the media attention right now on the millennial generation, while they are numerous and voluminous and will outnumber what we saw when the baby boomers came through the workforce, I just wanted to remind everybody, let's just keep cool heads and let's not forget that you do have some folks in that Generation X, some people right there in the middle of your workforce that have already been through some ups and downs and seen some gyrations in the market and are well equipped to take these businesses of yours to the next level. So just wanted to be encouraging about that. What we're going to get into today is kind of an extension of that idea a little bit. Okay, maybe that's just trying too hard to make a connection, but here's where I'm going. The Rockstar Project is a project that my buddy Jason LeVasseur has put together. And Jason and I had a chance to meet a few weeks back in Austin, Texas. We were both attending the same conference as attendees, which is rare for speakers to actually be attendees at a conference instead of speaking at a conference or at an event. So we had a good chance to just sort of sit back and watch some of our colleagues do their thing and get to see what they're about. But we kind of got to talking a little bit and realized that he has done this remarkable project, really helping people connect with themselves, which in my line of work has really proven to be the number one key that successful people have to do first. You've got to figure out who you are and what you're about. So we're going to spend the most of our time today really letting you hear from Jason and what he's got going on. So we have at least part of this is available on our YouTube channel. The video portion of that will be posted up there. But I will sort of forewarn you, we did run into a couple of tech issues. So it sounds really good at first, and then I'll make a brief transition, and we had to switch technologies, but the content is just phenomenal in what Jason had to say, and I didn't want you to miss a minute of it. So rather than reschedule, we just switch technologies, but I'll do that handover in probably about 7 or 8 minutes in from here. And until then, I'm going to zip it because you're going to hear from Jason. Jason, I got to ask you, you've got a ton of material that's out there for the world to see on YouTube and videos posted on your Facebook page and all kinds of stuff. And you've got something really cool going on that has the little R in the circle at the end of it. Yeah, I do like that. Can you tell us what exactly trademark is the Rockstar Project?
The Rockstar Project is the overall name for all of the things that I do. So under the umbrella of the Rockstar Project is Jason LeVasseur, the touring musician, Jason LeVasseur, the speaker for teenagers, Jason LeVasseur, the speaker for colleges, leadership, orientation, and I help students realize and discover how to have a great student experience, whether in high school or middle school or college.
So 2 things I really like.
And how to connect with their friends.
Yeah, that's one, right? You knew that was coming, the connection part. The second one is, I will tell you, when I was cutting my teeth in this business as a professional speaker myself, I used to work with a group affiliated with monster.com called Making It Count.
Yes, only because you told me all about it when we were together in Austin, Texas. But it's a very cool program.
Mostly high school students, freshmen, juniors, and seniors. There was another program that was geared toward college students on how to manage their money, and which is interesting because another friend of mine who was a former speaker with Making It Count, a guy named Lonnie Matthews. Lonnie is doing a program here in the Houston area. He's done for a couple of years. That's God, what does he call it? Oh, he calls it Money Live. And he brings in students and creates an interactive experience and does some neat stuff and makes them realize the realities of you only make so much money, but you have to pay rent, you got to pay bills, you got to take care of stuff. And if you pay for the wrong things first, you get in trouble.
Right. Yeah. So troubadours by trade and stereotypically and historically, where and one of the things that we always miss as artists out there in the world is the business side of it. So that has been an awesome educational thing. Even growing up in high school and in college as a musician, even as a hobbyist, I was an English major in college. And so when I graduated and I started a business, I had no real financial background in how to just manage all that kind of stuff. I mean, I made money playing music then as a self-employed musician, and that's a whole nother, we could do hours on the things that I learned on how to manage money on the road, on tour, how to save money on tour. It's amazing what the learning curve is for an artist. And most artists who I know, it's still a missing piece in their wheelhouse. They need management.
When you talk about the Rockstar Project, it's an embodiment of what you do. As I looked at some of your videos, your audiences are pretty broad. I mean, you have everything from, like you said, high school and college students to, I saw some elementary school kids. That looked like a blast, man. Tell me.
Yes, that was a blast. And with elementary school kids, it's really more, the messages are much more fine-tuned. They're simpler, just more storytelling. And really at the heart of it, at the heart of all the Rockstar Project, it is the idea that what you do matters. And that is really a phrase that I mention all the time. What you do matters. What you say matters. What you say to your friends matters. How you act with your family matters. Because the relationships that you have, Rockstar Project, all your relationships, you are in bands, and that's one of the ideas that I present to everybody is that you're in a band now. So all of the relationships that you have, when you see them as bands, you realize how the things that you do impact the people in your band. And I tell stories about being on tour and how one member's out of tune, then it really makes the whole band out of tune. And your role in that band even as a child is to do your best to help other people stay in tune.
What are the kids doing these days?
They're doing the same thing that they've been doing for like 1,000 years, maybe even more, maybe even longer. I mean, the sort of the issues, there are some new things that they're faced with, and I think from my perspective, from the stage looking out, it's a lot of technology of today. My main goal is to help them be cool with who they are in spite of those things or alongside those things. As new things come into our lives, as new challenges come into our lives, it doesn't matter how old you are, really understanding that you're kind of the boss of your choices. And the way I talk about it is I talk about being the driver of your life. And I have a song that goes with that in a lot of my talks that makes sense. And it really connects with the kids when I talk about that in that context with the song, about being the driver and being the one in charge of the direction that you're going. You decide how fast, how slowly, whether you go right or left. And that is the gist of it.
How does that song play out? Can you give us a little sample of that? A little something?
Wait, what is this?
What is this?
What is this? What is this? Okay. I'll play the first verse and chorus. Okay. I played the wrong chord in my own song. Isn't that
You know
awesome?
what? If you're out of tune, the whole band's out of tune. Some wise guy told me that.
Hey, don't touch that dial. The one driving. Hey, don't you deny it's never that when the music's up real loud. Throw your bags in the trunk and let's get out of town. You forgot the map, that's alright, cause you can pay for the gas. I see you buy your CDs and I guess that's okay with me, as long as you really know that I get to pick what goes into the stereo. I know the driver is a DJ, gets to pick the song as you ride along.
You rock too hard. I think we broke the internet is what happened.
We broke the internet.
All right, folks, I told you this would happen right about here. So we're going to make a quick transition over to a different technology where we kept this interview going. So without any further hesitation, here is Jason. Oh, man, this is so cool. Folks, we're sitting here today with Jason LeVasseur from Nashville, Tennessee, as I refer to it as Nash Vegas.
Yes, Nash Vegas. And I live in a part of town that's called East Nasty. It's the east side of town. We are in Metro Nashville, so we're in the city. But the locals have given it the title East. It was East Nasty, and then we just dropped the H and we just sort of embraced the East Nasty because all the artists and creative folks live on this side of town. So we're a little bit nastier than the west side.
It's a fun place, man. My extended family is from the Nashville area.
Humans, normal human behavior is that we want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's why I think it's important to see your groups of the people that you work with or your families as bands, because that's bigger than you. Your brother lives in the borough. I live in East Nasty, so I'm part of a club. He's part of a club.
Yeah.
We want to be associated with something larger than ourselves in a way. We want to feel a sense of belonging to a group. And that's something that I really understand about human behavior. And that is why connections are so important.
God, you are speaking my language, man. Connection is at the core of everything. In my experience of working with leaders and talking to people that lead organizations all over the world, I can tell you the ones that are getting it done are the ones that connect the best. And to kind of put it in rock and roll terms, we started trying to record this earlier on a different technology and ran into some issues, but I mentioned one of my rock star idols, Sammy Hagar, and one of the things that I really admire about Sammy is that he is a super savvy business guy. He's made money selling fire alarm systems or fire protection systems, and he made a tequila company he sold for about, $80 million, and now he's marketing a rum company. But he thinks of the world as kind of like what you said, which I think is so cool. I haven't thought about that. I talk about teams a lot. Everybody's part of different teams, but I like it. You're thinking about who's your rock and roll super group.
Yeah, and you're in it. You are part of it because you're making your band better. And I come at it from the band perspective because I have a career as a musician. I've been a touring musician my whole life, and so the things that I think about are music and instruments and putting on a show. And how do you get your band or your team to perform at its best? And that's by not only embracing the fact that you're a rock star and what you do matters, but that you elevate everybody else on your team or in your band, that they rock their instrument too. Whatever their role is in the band, on the team, whatever the team may be, if it's at work or a sports team, is that they are rocking their instrument to the best of their ability. So my family is a band. My college roommates, we were a band. I was actually in musical bands. I've played with lots of different musical bands. But I have a group of neighbors, we're friends, we get together every once in a while, that's a band. So in each of those bands, you play a role. And again, what you do in those bands really matters to the other members of the band.
Let's be honest. We all thought that Nickelback song was pretty cool when it first came out because it was so spot on, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be a rock star. Now, what made it for me was Billy Gibbons singing in the background, but that's a whole other issue.
Right. For those of you who don't know, that's a member of the band ZZ Top.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. You've got a guitar there in the room with you. Was that your first instrument that you started playing?
No, actually, I did not. And so this is kind of a part of my story about for students about discovering something that you're passionate about. So I started on the saxophone in the 5th grade, and then I moved to the drums in 7th grade, and I really loved the drums. I love the drums, and I excelled at the drums because I spent a lot of time practicing. And then I was in the jazz ensemble and the concert band and even the marching band. And then in high school, I discovered that I also enjoyed singing. And at that time, Night Ranger had a singing drummer. Phil Collins was a singing drummer. And all these things were possible, that I could also be a singing drummer. And then going off to college, I couldn't take a drum set with me. And I actually went to Italy before I went to college. And my parents knew how much I loved music. For high school graduation, I got a guitar. And prior to that, I had never played guitar. So it wasn't until I was 18 years old that I started the instrument that is now my career. Right? And I meet people all the time who start and find their instrument in their 20s or 30s or 40s, or even later in life, that you could finish one career on one instrument and discover a new instrument that you could fall in love with too, and work on it and get good at it enough so that it can help support you.
God,
but the first instrument was the saxophone.
And so cool.
Actually, I might even say that my first instrument was just the stage. I wanted to be a performer, and I knew that at a very young age. And my parents do tell stories about me just wanting to be, dancing on a table with an audience.
Oh, man. It's so much. I have the privilege, and it is absolutely that, of living with a toddler. That's what I would describe. It's an experience, right? My daughter, my daughter is getting close. She's a couple months away from her 4th birthday, and what a blessing this little girl is, because she's just tall, and she's funny, and she's talkative, and I mean, big surprise, right? I mean, her daddy talks for a living, so she's a little talker, and she is her own little personality. But she does some tumbling and gymnastics, and now she's learning about ballet. She started that the first of the year. And everything for her is a performance. You're right, man. Her instrument right now is the stage, and the stage is anywhere she gets someone to watch her do something, and she can make them smile and feel good.
And that right there is really important, that we understand that whatever instrument and whatever band that we're doing. So you start with saying, like, what are you doing in your band to help your band members? And then what is your band doing to help the community? What is your team, what is your band doing to help elevate your street or your whole entire company or your school or your church, whatever it is that your band is a part of, because your band is also a part of something even bigger than itself too, because your band has an audience. And bands, I mean, one of the things that I like to talk about with students, and especially student leaders, and this would apply to leadership in the corporate world, is that your band, your executive team is a band, and you have an audience, and that is the rest of your employees. And your employees are watching you because you're on stage. The spotlight is on you. You get to play your instrument in front of an audience more often. But the truth of the matter is the stage that band is on, the stage was not created for the band that is rocking in that moment. The stage was created so that the audience would have a better experience in watching the band. So the stage wasn't created for the performer. The stage was created for the audience. The microphones weren't created for the band. The microphones were created for the audience. So then you realize that the band exists for the audience. So that everything that you do from the stage, you've got to consider the audience first. Because that's why, and so that's sort of my idea about reaching out with your band to the greater community. What you do as a band really matters.
This is so amazing. You said earlier that oftentimes, it's the musicians, the creative types that maybe aren't as attuned to the business side of what they do or how to apply that. But as you described, when you painted that picture for me just now of the stage is there not for the band, but for the audience, that really stands out in my mind when you think about how people connect, right? When I think about, my experiences in a sales role, right, or working with sales teams, when I'm doing that, we're always talking about, are you trying to perfect a pitch so that you make yourself look good, or are you really trying to connect with your client to let them know that you hear and empathize with the challenges or the problem that they have, and that you can work together to help solve that problem or create a solution for them? And in essence, that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, As soon as you lose the ego, and I think there's an evolution. If I bring it back to being an artist, as an 18-year-old singer, I thought that the audience existed to praise me. They were there to clap for my songs, even though they weren't good at the time. I was just learning how to play. And then at some point, you realize that you're there for them, right? That you're there to help them have an experience. They're not there for you at all. You're there for them. Yeah, and that's just a really, I think it's important sort of maturity thing that I try to talk about with students, especially student leaders, is that you don't get elected student government president because you're better than anybody else. You get elected student government president because you can make everyone else's lives better, right? You're on stage not for yourself. You're on stage for your audience.
God, I'm loving the simplicity of this message and the impact that I hope that the listeners hear. You know, so often the people that listen, a lot of folks that listen to the show, you know, are those that they see the world a little different, right? These are folks that are very maybe independent-minded, but find themselves within an organization that maybe tries to put constraints around them. In other words, they've got, let me see if I'm going to stretch. I'm going to try to put this in musical terms, but let's say that there's a conductor or a band director that's trying to orchestrate what they do and when they do it, yet you've got some folks that have an understanding and a connection with their audience that goes, no, but the audience really wants to feel something else. They really want to go a different direction. You know, think about times that I've, you know, gone to see a band. Some bands have adapted this well, but you can always tell when you have that prima donna on the stage that is always trying to upstage everybody else. This happened to me really. This was really cool. I went to a concert one time at the Cain's Ballroom in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is a storied venue, and I encourage you to check it out if you haven't heard of the Cain's. But the Cain's Ballroom, and I had a chance to go see Robert Randolph and the Family Band. Are you familiar with Robert Randolph?
Oh, yeah. They're amazing.
Yeah. I mean, classic jam band, right? It was totally cool.
Sure.
And one of the things that Robert Randolph did during this show, and this guy jams the steel guitar like I have never seen. And
right.
But he's got his guitar player up there, and he looks out into the audience when they're in a seriously deep groove that's been going for a while, and the whole place is really feeling the vibe. The energy is unbelievable. And Robert looks out in the crowd, and he goes, all right, how many of you know how to play the guitar? And a few people kind of raise their hands, and he starts bringing people up on the stage one at a time, saying, all right, you play the solo for the song. And the audience is like, okay, how's this going to work, right? So, you get a clown up there that's, too drunk to do anything, and he, hits a horrible chord, and they take the guitar away from him. Then it goes to the next one who kind of is playing about like I would if I had a guitar in front of me that maybe knows two chords, but it's not the two chords that go with the key the band is playing in at the moment. So that sounds awful. And then they bring this guy up who gets into a back and forth with another guitar player on stage. And it's like all of a sudden something happened in the room, and it went to the next level where now you've got this audience member who is, laying down a jam. And Robert gets this look on his face, and he kind of looks out at the crowd, and the crowd starts going bananas. For that moment, the entire crowd was embodied by that one guy who was now a huge part of the show itself, right? Yeah. And I thought, what a cool metaphor that is for why we're really here. And you just summed it up, right?
The job of the band is to reach out to the crowd, not to play at the audience, but with and for the audience. We're on stages all the time. You're a speaker all the time. And you can, from the stage, my goal in a room full of people is to embrace the entire space, to wrap my arms around the whole room and bring them into my experience and share with it together. I have performed with other performers who are playing at the faces in the crowd, right? And I don't think they're having an entirely whole experience. And at some point, maybe they get a little philosophy from me, and they're like, "Oh, I get it now." But it is important that you're doing what you can to embrace the crowd. And what Robert Randolph did in that moment is that he reached out to the crowd. And I tell a similar story in, if you remember the Bruce Springsteen song "Dancing in the Dark."
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right? Bruce Springsteen song "Dancing in the Dark." It has like 20 million views on YouTube. But at the end of the video, he's dancing. he reaches out into the crowd and he pulls a girl who we later come to find out is Courtney Cox.
Right.
When she becomes famous with Friends.
Right.
But he reaches out into the crowd and he pulls her on stage and they dance as the video ends.
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, like you said, you are bringing the entire crowd up on stage with you.
Yeah.
Right? It's not us versus them. It's all of us together.
So let me ask you this.
And it's cool.
Thinking about what you just talked about, what are some other examples that maybe would be non-musical examples that you've seen where people have metaphorically brought people from their audience up on stage with them? Where could that show up in everyday life?
I think any teaching moment, any mentoring moment, anytime that you are sharing some of your knowledge with somebody who could really use the knowledge.
Okay.
In a leadership setting, it's providing the people that you're asking to do a job with the tools, is to give them the tools, give them the stage, give them the correct instruments and microphone. So, if you've got a new employee and you have a language in your workplace that everyone's really accustomed to and the new person on the job doesn't know all the acronyms, teach them those things right off the bat. Give them all the tools that they need to succeed. Right? When you pull them on the stage and hand them a tuned instrument. Don't give them a broken guitar.
Yeah. I love that.
So outside of music, any mentoring, any time that you can help somebody do their job better because they're again, I go back to they're in your band.
Yeah.
Or if they're not in your band, you're helping their band. But even by doing that, you're suddenly in their band because you're in their circle. You're in there. You're connecting with them and helping them.
I love it.
And I want to rewind a little bit because you said something before the Robert Randolph story that made me think about something important also in bands because you were talking about, anyway, here's the deal. So sometimes in your band, for the benefit of the band, you have to do a song and there's an instrument in that song that you don't want to play. Sometimes you have to play a part that is not your forte. Sometimes you have to do a job that is a job that you don't want to do, but the job exists because it's going to help the band move forward. And all of us in musical bands at some point have had to play a part that we weren't crazy about playing because it didn't showcase our talents fully, or many other things. So imagine that you're an amazing guitar player, but this song really just needs you to play the triangle, right? So you've been given the job to hit the triangle on every fourth beat for an entire song, and you don't want to do that because you didn't work all these years just to play the triangle. But guess what? This song just needs a triangle. So play this instrument for the band, with the band, to help the band succeed in this project, in this song. And all of us have had to do that. And when we approach it from the band perspective, we realize that we're part of a song where we don't grumble and walk away and say, like, oh, my God, I can't believe I have to play the triangle. Because if even that tiny part of the triangle, if you play it off the beat, it will mess up the song. The band needs you to do that job, no matter how small it is, or even if it's not in your area of expertise, or it's a job you don't want to do. At that moment in time, for the week or 3 months or 6 months during that project, the band needs you to fulfill that role and to kick butt on the triangle.
God, I'm just sitting here with a big smile on my face, totally enamored by the simplicity of the message. And you're so right. Whenever I'm listening to a band that I really dig, and then I'll notice, I mean, you notice it, we all have, all of a sudden you hear an instrument on an album from a band that you've listened to for a while, and you've never heard that band use that instrument, right? When even Motley Crue used a piano when they did Home Sweet Home, which turned out to be one of their biggest hits, right? And,
right.
And you listen to an early Motley Crue album, like the first album they had come out, Too Fast for Love, right? It sounds like a speed metal album. It's not quite speed metal, but it's going that direction. And then to think that their biggest hit someday would be, in the mid 80s, that Tommy Lee would get off the drum kit and sit down and play the piano. But wow, what a moment that was, right?
It was an amazing moment for them that they were willing to include a new instrument, because every time you add a new instrument to the band, it's gonna influence the direction a little bit. And you can stay stagnant and play the same 4 instruments album after album after album, or you can be willing and be open to change, and it will grow the band, and you will be fluid and move forward. And the same thing applies to teams and companies, is that if we do the same thing over and over again, nothing's going to happen. Why don't we introduce the piano? You know, and it's amazing what just adding that one instrument can do to a band. It can make people think in a different way. It can inspire a different way of writing lyrics. It can inspire a different way of doing your job. So yeah, it's important to always be open to adding different instruments. You know, and in music, I mean, they were, luckily, a year before that song, or 2 years before that song, Van Halen put out an album with electric organ.
Yeah.
And the song Jump.
Yeah, of course.
So Jump paved the way for Motley Crue to be able to do Home Sweet Home, because Van Halen caught a lot of flack from the metal world that Eddie Van Halen, the guitar god, the king of lots of notes in a very short time, all of a sudden he's playing piano. That's not tough enough for us. And yet Eddie Van Halen proved to the world that, hey, these notes are tough too. So sit back and let's let this song called Jump go to number 1 on all the charts. You know, although the metal world was like, no, you can't add electric piano. It's not cool. It's not cool. But guess what? It was cool. And Eddie Van Halen, just like the guys in Motley Crue, were willing to incorporate a new instrument into their band.
You know,
and it changed.
Yeah, I mean,
it changed the history of metal.
It's interesting. It did. It changed where it went. You know, I recently have been sort of seeking out interviews with different musical artists that are people I might not have listened to. And I recently was listening to a really interesting interview with Scott Ian, who's a guitar player from Anthrax, and they were a band that was huge when I was growing up. And I'm going to admit I didn't listen to. If you played an Anthrax song for me right now, I don't know that I would know that song. But for some reason, I've always known who Scott Ian is, which I thought was interesting.
Right.
And when I listened to the interview, and this was one that was recorded sometime in the last year or so, it was fascinating for me to hear him talk about, we have these perceptions of what rockers are like.
Sure.
And as I've been digging in and listening to people on the last episode, 2 episodes ago, I interviewed a friend of mine who is an event producer that makes things, concerts happen. He was telling some stories about behind the scenes working with, people like Kiss and Kevin Costner and Charlie Daniels and all kinds of great musicians. And it's fascinating. By the way, it's episode 31 if anybody wants to go back and give that a listen. It was an episode called Entertainment Never Sleeps, and it's a cool interview. What you find out is that there is oftentimes the stage persona that maybe does what the audience wants, but there's also that offstage person who, in the context of being a member of, in your words, a different band, is different. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we see a musician that is perceived a certain way, and sometimes they'll go off the rails and they think, well, this is who I am on stage. If I'm going to be authentic, I have to be like this all the time. And maybe on stage they're bananas. I mean, they're crazy. Maybe they're destructive. Maybe they're very aggressive and different things. And then when they come off stage, they think they still have to be in that persona. But you hear stories about people that are very different off stage than they are on. Can you talk to that a little bit?
The true rock stars, and this is based on working with lots of nationally touring bands, is that rock stars are really savvy and cognizant of their own personal health and their well-being, and they get enough sleep, and they eat well, and they drink water. And one of the stories that I share with students, there's a band that's recently broken up called LMFAO, and they are a party rock band. That's how they promoted their characters in the videos. In the videos, there's always champagne bottles, there's always limos, there's always women, there's always debauchery. There's just this craziness in the videos. So, and I played a couple shows with them, and those guys are just down-to-earth husbands and dads who created a performance persona.
Okay.
And backstage, they drink water and Gatorade, and on stage, they drink water and Gatorade and apple juice in Jack Daniel's bottles, because they've got stuff to do tomorrow. They really do have stuff to do tomorrow. One of the biggest selling points for them is the party idea, right? They're selling a product, but they're actually not able to live that life 24/7 because they've got responsibilities and they've got people that they need to take care of. And so they created this persona, and they can go back and forth between that because they're actors, right? Mm-hmm. Marilyn Manson is another example of this. Marilyn Manson is just a smart business guy and a really good musician who created Marilyn Manson, the persona, which is a theatrical person. Like Alice Cooper is another example of that. They created an act, mm-hmm. and so they get on stage and they act, and it's a theater piece with music, and it's awesome, and it's fun for an audience. So they can go back and forth between being themselves and being the person that they are on stage, because it's just like being on Broadway. You know, you actually know that you're not Benjamin Franklin, even though you're playing Benjamin Franklin in a play for 6 months, right? You get on stage, you play Benjamin Franklin, and then you get off stage, and then you're someone's husband or wife or dad, you know, and that's the transition. What happens in an unhealthy, unbalanced person is that they get on stage and they're destructive as part of their on-stage persona, but they might have already been destructive in their off-stage persona, and they're the ones who have, unfortunately, addiction problems, and they don't last as long. And this is an example of that would be Axl Rose. Axl Rose is and has real issues. Genuinely, he suffers from many issues that require professional intervention. Mm-hmm. He also happened to have been in a really good band, and he also happened to have been a creative artist with a good voice. You know,
it's Guns N' Roses for anybody that doesn't follow
Guns N' Roses, he's more destructive off stage than he was ever on stage. So, you know, but that's someone with mental illness.
Yeah.
Right? But again, those are the exceptions. They just happen to usually make it to the headlines of being quote unquote rock stars. The true rock stars are the ones who, like Axl Rose, would be a true rock star if he could. And it is a mental illness, so it's not fully on him.
Right.
You know, a rock star thing to do would be to really put the band first and to put his family first and figure out how to fight these demons with help. With help. There's no doubt that we can't do it alone, because that's why we need a band. I mean, we're not. So anyway, so when your question was how do you switch back and forth, my thing is that there are very few who are destructive on and off stage, because for many of them it's a performance. But most of the performers are simply the same person they were off stage that they were on stage. Sammy Hagar is just as happy on stage as he is off stage.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
From what I gather, I mean, I've never had a chance to sit down and have a beer with him, but I would imagine if I did, I know exactly what I would get.
Right, but even so, that you know exactly what you get, because he's going to talk to the audience of 70,000 people, but he's also knows that he's speaking to individuals in the crowd.
Yeah.
Right. What he says, he's saying to the guy in the third row just as much as he's saying it to the 70,000 people.
Yeah, of course. Your ego is part of your persona. It's part of who you are, and some people are able to hold that in check, and others let the ego sort of drive their own behaviors and actions more than it should, and sometimes to a destructive manner. And we hope that it's not the case. And you hear people talk about authenticity in business a lot. And again, if you're entrepreneurial minded, if you see the world a little bit differently, it's easy to believe sometimes your own hype. And even let's keep it musical, even Public Enemy said you shouldn't believe the hype. So as we stop and think about the hype, you know, it's easy to believe that, oh, they're cheering for me. No, they're cheering for the moment. They're cheering for their own excitement, and they're expressing how excited they are for the music and for the moment. And you know, I hear leaders a lot talk about, you know, they question, you know, well, how am I supposed to be at work? But, I am a dad. I am a parent. I am a husband, a wife, a neighbor, somebody that goes to church with you, whatever. I'm somebody who has another, personal, private, spiritual,
Right.
family life. I have different bands, right, to use your vernacular. As you put all that together, these people struggle. They're like, well, I'm supposed to be this person. This is who I'm supposed to be all the time. But what we've learned and what my study has done is I've looked at the impact of our personalities is that's true. We know how we're supposed to act in certain situations, in socialized situations. If we're at a business dinner, if we're giving a presentation, if we're talking to a customer or a vendor or something like that, we know how we're supposed to act. But deep down, if our needs aren't being met, we can only maintain that persona for so long. The people, though, that really connect the best with others are those that can authentically say, you know what, we've tried this approach here, but what I fear is we're not getting to something that I need or you need. And they're able to change that conversation in a way that connects at a deeper level with the person they're talking to. Musicians find a way to do that in some respect, but I think what you're telling us is those that have staying power in their careers know when to flip that switch and know when to go deeper and know when to just say, you know what, we're here today just to have a good time, and the context of the moment is fun.
You need to play a role. You need to play a role when you're walking into a meeting and you have a responsibility in that meeting, and the people in that meeting don't need to know your entire life story. They don't need to know all the interesting aspects about you and your hobbies and the fact that you like to weave and you like to make yogurt. Like, that's irrelevant in certain settings.
Right.
Right? So you're wearing a mask. In a way, you can also say you're putting on a mask.
Okay.
You put on a suit, this is part of your mask. This is since the dawn of man, we've been masking. We've been putting on sunglasses to feel a certain way. We put on makeup, which is a mask. We wear anything that we choose to put on sort of is a mask. So you're walking into the meeting, you are wearing the mask of you as the business person that day.
Mm-hmm.
When you get home, you can take that mask off. You're still you in all those places, though. You're still you. I still think that the authenticity is still there. You will shine through the mask if you can respect yourself for being you. You don't have to be anybody but you in any setting, right? And this is sort of a lesson that I learned growing up as a camp counselor. I always had these older camp counselors, and one of them was particularly strict because he had a military background. And when I took on his role at the summer camp, I tried to be him, and it didn't fit my personality. But I could still do that job with my personality and still get the job done. It's just I was going to play the instrument in this way, and he played it in that way. You still have to be yourself and authentic to who you are in every, and I know that I added another metaphor in there with the mask. Sorry about that. But
no, don't apologize, because you're.
It. I mean,
I think it fits.
Hopefully it makes sense. I mean, whatever. Yeah, you go on a Friday night. You're dressing up to go out. You're putting on a mask.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna walk a little taller. You're gonna strut. That's all part of your persona for the night. But really, you're still you. Flipping a switch may be a way to say it. But I hope that everybody in every setting realizes that no matter what setting they're going into, whatever job they have is not self-serving.
Yeah.
Like, roles in bands are not created just to elevate the member, right? Nobody gets to the top of a company just to be purely self-serving. People do, yes, I understand that. But at some point they have to realize that they exist for the betterment of the band and the audience, not for their own career advancement.
That's awesome.
And of course, I'm taking politics out of this completely.
Well, let me. Yeah, that could be a whole nother episode, especially in light of what's going on today. But let me kind of switch gears real quick, and then I'll kind of guide us toward a segment that we call the lightning round. But
okay.
Let me just ask you this: what just you talk to a variety of audiences, young, old, primarily students, but you will speak to business audiences too. Is that true?
The more and more that I speak about these ideas, the more and more I'm asked to speak to corporate audiences, because these band ideas really apply.
Oh, they're huge. I got to tell you, man, this would be a huge market for you. I want to see you continue to do your work in the schools, because listen, if you haven't been out and looked up Jason LeVasseur on YouTube and his Facebook page, go out and see what's going on, because this guy is everywhere. You're having a blast if you've got 5-year-olds. You're having a blast if you have 25-year-olds. And
Yeah, I do. I have fun, and it's exciting. Coming up, I'm gonna do my first TED Talk.
tell us about it.
And
Where's it going to
talk
be?
about
Where
the
can people
game.
see it?
Penn State, Erie. It's a live event in Erie, Pennsylvania on April 16th. It's been fun. I'm excited to get an opportunity to do a TED Talk and share the ideas with the band with an audience that's not students. This is all going to be academics.
Oh, this is going to be really cool.
Be,
But by the way, Jason, if people are interested in having you come speak to their group, whether it's a student group, a corporate group, or for an association, right, or any type of event where
Yep.
you want somebody to come in and remind everybody, because look, deep down, I don't care who you are. I don't care what industry you're in. Everybody wants to be a rock star.
Sure.
Everybody wants to do it. Where do they find you? How do they get in touch with you? How do they get to know Jason?
You could go to therockstarproject.com, therockstarproject.com, jasonlevasseur.com. You can email me at jason@therockstarproject.com. You can also tweet to me at Jason LeVasseur. Any of those ways.
Reach out to Jason directly. We'll put all the links in the show notes. They're there. But jasonlevasseur.com, therockstarproject.com. Tweet him, Facebook him. Just get out there and find this guy. Just get a message to him one way or another. He will get you to the right people to make it happen for you, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Sure.
That's cool.
Sure,
Hey,
sure.
do me a favor. As we get ready to head, I'm going to put you on the spot here, okay? We're going to find out we're going to test your chops a little bit. This next segment's called the lightning round. Could you give us a little music that'll take us over the hump into the lightning round, and then I'll pop out with a few questions for you?
You want me to pick up the guitar?
Yeah. Would you mind?
No, not at all. I'm not going to be able to hear you as I'm playing. It's going to be me playing to you.
You just play, and we'll just, when you think you've done a long enough of a transition, then we'll see you on the other side. So, ladies and gentlemen, sit back and enjoy. Here's Jason LeVasseur.
Yow! Drip drop singing in a lover's way. We carry the light of love into the next day. And every day, Jane came calling like a lady who carries the light of love and the money in her shoe. And what would you do? Has anybody seen my pair of shoes? Think I might be falling, how about you? Are you ready now to love? What would you do? Anybody seen my pair of shoes? Ow!
That's what I'm talking about, man. A pair of shoes. Give it up for Jason LeVasseur.
That's funny. That's not the first time somebody thought I was thinking about shoes. It's just a love song about wanting to slow down when you're falling in love too fast and you want to throw out the parachute, put on the brakes a little bit, but then at the end of the song you just go for it and cut off the parachute.
See, the parachute and pair of shoes. We're going to work on that. That's really funny.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, so with that faux pas, see, this is why it's important to rehearse, right?
No, it's funny. I've had that song requested. That people will come to me after the show. They're like, "Hey, what's the shoe song?" And I was like, "I don't have a song about shoes." Like, yeah. Has anybody seen my pair of shoes? I'm like, no. Oh man, you missed the whole point. That changes the entire song. And so the song about pair of shoes is just a love song about falling in love. The song about pair of shoes is about leaving your shoes under someone's bed, right? That's more of a sneaky, I got to get out of here before I get caught kind of song. And that's not the song I wrote.
Speaking of rock stars. But anyway, all right.
Yeah.
So we're going to jump in. Thank you for that. That was good. And I totally blew what was an otherwise awesome song. So here we go.
They're both good versions of the song. They're both good versions.
You know what? You know what you just did there? You made it about your audience. Yeah. You did.
It doesn't matter what I say. It's how you interpret it, right?
That's art. Man. But that's art, right? Art. There's plenty of songs that have resonated with people for reasons other than why they wrote it.
Right.
I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here. It's something we call the lightning round. We're going to jump right to it. First thing that comes into your mind, quick answers. Try to keep it, 15, 20 seconds. We'll kind of see where it goes. Jason LeVasseur, what does happiness mean to you?
Ooh, good question. Happiness is feeling good about where you are in the world with your relationships with people. Are you healthy? Are you loving somebody? Is somebody loving you? Are you hurting anybody? Is anybody hurting you? Lean more towards the loving and away from the hurting, and that will make you more happy.
Oh, dig it, man. Dig it. All right, my friend, let's go to the second question. What does success mean to you?
Similar to the previous answer, I think success is finding your instrument, discovering your instrument, being open to playing your instrument, and playing that instrument in the band that's a right fit for you. And if you're in a band that's not good fit for you, fix the band or get out of the band.
Wow, that's a good one. All right, so here's one. This is going to be a little tougher for you, I think. Being a music guy, this is going to be a tricky one, but here we go. You're stranded on a desert island for the rest of your life, and it's just you. And all right, for you, we might let you have a guitar. Don't know yet, but you got a trick.
Yeah, go for it.
The trick is, in terms of recorded music, you can only take with you one album that is the album that becomes the soundtrack that you listen to from here on out. What would that album be, and why?
Genesis, 3 sides live. Because it's a double album with 4 sides. And it's a really interesting, some of it's live and some of it's studio. And it's got really great songs, like Phil Collins, the singing drummer, is singing on it. Great musicianship on the album. Mm-hmm. And I listened to it the first time in my life when I was a little kid. And so anytime I hear that album, it brings me back nostalgically to that time in my life. So that impulsively is my one answer.
I love it, man. I love it. And that's the first time Genesis has been shared on the group. And I'll echo that, as a guy who was in high school in the 80s and college in the early 90s, that definitely was a big part of the soundtrack of me growing up as well, too. And you're right, some fantastically...
That is a hard question because there are so many. But I had to go with an album that was a double album.
Of course. Gotta get as much music in there as you can. I love that you got the double aspect too. Some of it was studio, some of it was live. So you feel like you took 2 albums. You feel like you cheated the system and you got ahead. I like it.
But it was one purchase.
Yes, exactly. You said one album in there. There it is. It happens to have 4 sides, 2 pieces of vinyl, right? It would have been pretty awesome. So we get that there. Yes. All right, so people know how to get in touch with you. As we kind of round things out, do you mind if I ask you one more little musical interlude on the way out, and we'll let it go with that?
No, not at all. Let me go back to the room where the guitar is. I was walking around the house as we spoke.
I love it. Got to do those chores, man. The family will be home soon.
Right. So why don't I do a song? I'll do a cover song on this last one because it is one of my favorite all-time bands, and it's not Genesis, but you'll know it as soon as I start it. And thank you very much for having me on your show today.
It's been a pleasure. Take us out, Jason.
I will. I'll be back in a sec. What would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song. I'll try not to sing out of key. I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. I'm gonna try with a little help, try with a little help, try with a little help from my friends. God could say, wow! Hello?
I can't think of a better way to bring that to a close, man. Holy crap, that was awesome. Good stuff, brother. If you enjoyed what you just heard, please post your 5-star review and subscribe to Success Charger today. Your future is waiting.
Conference recording stopped.